Hey folks, welcome back to Jaws on Sports. We've been on hiatus, but we're back. We're better than ever, and we're ready to roll tonight with the college football playoffs. Zach, how is it going?
Doing all right.
Zach is doing all right. That's good. I think he's a little under the weather, but he walked through 10 miles of snow and ice, no shoes on, everything else to get here just for this show tonight. So it's been a while since we've done anything. Online here, but we've been together quite a bit. We together Oklahoma City for about 2 weeks during Thanksgiving. We spent a lot of time playing PlayStation 5, the new college football game that I haven't been very successful with, but it's been fun. But tonight we are back going to talk about the playoff here and just on the surface, what how do you think that the committee did with the teams that were picked?
Going forward, who you play has to matter because Indiana, their best win was Michigan. It was 7-5. Um, and then SMU, I think SMU deserved to be there. I just think that they were rattled and they never settled in to that game. So I don't think the SMU pick was bad, but anybody that had any sort of knowledge on college football, they knew that Indiana had no shot. I mean, they did play one good team, the regular season, and they got totally washed in Columbus. Um, I don't know why anyone thought it would be different in the playoff, but they just didn't have the guys. They don't match up with anybody. If you put them against any of those other 11 teams, the same thing would have happened. It wouldn't have mattered. So I don't think it was necessarily a bad choice to put SMU in there, but Indiana, who you play's got to matter. If you lose, I hate the idea of a quality loss, but if you lose games to good teams compared to just beating up on a bunch of bums, that's something that they need to look at.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because now with these giant conferences, you got conferences that have 16, 18 teams in them, and you could be like Indiana and not have a top heavy schedule. Now, to their credit, they did have Michigan on their schedule, defending national champion Michigan, who was definitely not as good as they've been in the past. Um, I think that ultimately what it came out to be in Indiana's case is that they were a one-loss team in the Big Ten. Um, we saw what happened when they played Ohio State, and they didn't belong on the same field as a very good, not elite in my opinion, but very good Penn State team. So that's Indiana. I'm with you on SMU. I think it seemed like the bright lights kind of got the best of them. They started really bad. The quarterback Jennings, who had been stellar all year, just they got blitzed there right up front. Never had a chance.
Well, I don't take any account on first drives because the first drive of the game, you script your plays. A lot of the time, teams will go out and score. That doesn't set the tone for the rest of the game. You can score on the first drive and not score the rest of the game. SMU drove right down the field first drive. They had a 4th and 1. They went for it, and it was a boot with Jennings, their QB. And he
Hmm.
had the first down to run, but he threw it to a guy that was open for a touchdown, but he missed him bad. And then after that, it was just terrible. So
Yeah,
they,
momentum was completely on Penn State's side the whole first half after
I
that.
mean, they came out and they did fine. They just Penn State made the same coaching mistakes that they always do, but they just didn't jump on it. I mean,
Yeah, they
they
went
got
on the
stopped.
yeah, that one play they went on fourth down at their own 20-yard line.
Well,
Uh,
that they got stopped, and then SMU didn't score, and then they were in field goal range, and they went for it on 4th and 13 and got stopped. Like that stuff when they play against, higher level teams, that's why they lose. And they lose those games by 10 points.
yeah, since we're talking about that right now, it's kind of an interesting schedule quirk when you look at the second round or quarterfinal matchups because You get, Texas, Arizona State. We'll talk about that. Ohio State, Oregon rematch. If probably, I mean, very likely the two best teams out there. Notre Dame and Georgia. We'll talk about. But Penn State draws Boise State in the second round. No disrespect to Boise State. They play in the Mountain West Conference. They dominated. They took Oregon down to the wire first game of the year. They've got Heisman Trophy runner-up Ashton Genty, who is within spitting distance of breaking Barry Sanders' all-time rushing record. A bit in more games, of course, but they're kind of a one-trick pony. But they got a bye. Arizona State did too. So um, it's interesting to know and to think about that the college football playoff as it is this year is only on a 2-year contract. So the NCAA can do this however they want. They could expand to 14, 16. Hell, they could expand to 32 teams if they wanted to. Um, but if you do that, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see more blowouts like we did the past couple of days.
Well, one thing I'm gonna say is that Boise State's not a one-trick pony. They have a fantastic player and running back, but they're QB Madsen, and they have good guys on the outside. So this isn't just a team that's gonna run out there and they're not gonna throw it more than 10 times. That's not gonna happen. They're gonna make plays through the sky. Of course, you know that number 2 is gonna get a lot of carries, but they're a much more impressive team than just one guy. Um, Now with the blowouts thing, I actually wrote this down. Um, Playoffs started in 2014. I just went from 2019 to 2023. 3 games, semifinals, finals. In 2019, 37, 11, 28. In 2020, 35, 6, 17. 2021, 17, 21, 28. 2022, 21, 23, 15. And then 2023, 6, 1, 58. Those are the point spreads in the 3 games. So we didn't have a single year out of those 5 years, and it went down to 2014 as well, that all 3 games were one score or even two scores for that matter. I mean, we got 37, 35. We were at the 35. 58 in the national title game with Georgia and TCU. So
Mhm.
adding 8 extra teams, I don't know if they thought there would be more competitive games, but the fact that those games are at home and home field advantage matters in college football. It's gonna be like this. I mean, eventually you're gonna have a team that doesn't deserve to have that home field spot. You're gonna get, um, we'll say Texas goes on the road and they're playing BYU or something.
Yeah, yeah,
You'll
yeah.
see Texas win that game. But for the most part, these point spreads aren't going anywhere, especially with that first round. I mean, these teams are going to get blasted, and it's more than likely going to be the home team that's doing all the work. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's the extra games, and there's definitely a difference. The Big Ten's not that good. The Big Ten is very top heavy. There's 2 teams in the Big Ten. Penn State beats everyone that they should beat, but
Mhm.
they're not really worth anything. They're gonna get smashed. And Ohio State and Oregon are good. But you see when these teams get out there, like yesterday, Penn State won by 30 points. Texas, it looked a little bit closer than it was against Clemson. But these point spreads are not going anywhere. There's gonna be blowouts. There was blowouts with 4 teams, 12 teams, kind of expands that chance.
Yeah, yeah. Just it was funny. Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin, he was all over the interwebs yesterday. Um, after that, well, Friday night after Notre Dame beat the crap out of Indiana. Well, Indiana potentially took a playoff spot away from either Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina. All three of those were 9-3 teams in the Southeast Conference. Um, he didn't say a whole lot after the Tennessee game, but I think that it's good to kind of look at this through a like an experimental list, if you will, or experimental lens, because it's definitely an experiment. Um, I mean, this time last year, we had five major conferences. The Pac-12 was still the Pac-12. This year it was the Pac-2. So, if nothing else, it gave some of these teams a seat at the table. It gave Indiana, Clemson, Tennessee, and SMU a seat at the table. It's all you can ask. They all got beat handily. Um, but I think that's what they wanted to do, give these teams a seat at the table, see what can happen. Now you get to the final eight, and you got some big boys up there.
Well, end of the day, the top 4 teams are just gonna end up there in the semifinals anyways. But, just talking about the actual games,
Yeah.
Notre Dame just dominated. They ran the ball, were more physical. Indiana was outmatched. They didn't deserve to be there. Everyone knew that. You take off your, what is it, rose-colored glasses, is that what they say? They suck. Indiana was not a good team. Um, you can look great against really bad teams, and that's what they did all year. And their coach, I can't stand that guy. He's talking all this smack, and he's beating up Northwestern and Michigan State every week.
He's talking a
And
lot of smack, I tell you. Yeah.
but they were just outclassed. Their QB sucked. I could have went out there and did what he did. We could have had a similar stat line there. Super unimpressed with him. Notre Dame has a great secondary, but they were just more physical. You couldn't match up with them, and they actually had a good environment there as well. Um, for the next game, SMU. Like I said, that first drive, I don't take too much into that on any game, what happens first drive, but that really screwed them the rest of the way. They
Yeah.
just never settled in. I don't think that they were a bad team. I think that they could have been competitive. They just never got into rhythm. They didn't Their play calling was horrible. They didn't get their QB going. They didn't have 3, 4 yard runs on the ground. They couldn't get moving. They were just so shocked at what they were seeing. I mean, Penn State had great guys, but SMU, that was more of them not being ready for the moment than just getting outclassed, I think.
Yeah, I like SMU. I just think that they kind of got hit by a freight train there, and that happens. Yeah, we've seen it happen to the Sooners before. It happens. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
So, Tennessee and Ohio State, obviously, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and part of my job description is to give Buckeye fans hell on occasion when they do lose. And they don't lose very often. And I was a big Volunteers fan. I was singing Rocky Top up and down the halls this week. And then Ohio State came out there and beat the living hell out of them right off the bat. They were hitting the wide receivers, especially Jeremiah Smith, the superstar freshman who looks like he was injected with the Marvel Comics, you know, super serum or whatever, super soldier serum, whatever that stuff is. Um, it's a lot of pundits are talking about how come Ohio State didn't employ that uh, offense against their big rival here a few weeks back when they lost to Michigan. But Tennessee was never in that game, and you can't say that the Vols did not deserve to be there. They deserve to be in the playoff. You know,
Well,
don't
I
you
just
think?
think it was schematically, they just got destroyed because you would see Ohio State spread out the field and there would be 4 guys in the box. And then you'd have 2 receivers on each side for Ohio State close to the numbers. There's all that space in the middle.
Hmm.
And if Henderson or Judkins made one move, they would get 20 yards. It was just their spacing was horrible on defense. And offensively, they just couldn't get going. They like to run those wide sets as well. And I haven't that Nico kid, he's just not that good. And
He hadn't really showed much of anything this year. He
no,
started. He
No,
had some decent stats. He's had a couple of big games, but hadn't really shown a whole lot.
he's looked good against Mississippi State and Arkansas. Well, not
Yeah,
Arkansas this year, but teams like Arkansas in
yeah.
the SEC.
I think
And
Arkansas actually beat him, didn't they?
they did. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
bad example. But he he's just not impressive, and everyone talks about him. He's kind of like Nussmeier from LSU. I don't understand the buzz. And I was saying this before the game. That's their handicap.
yeah.
That's he's he's a young guy, but he makes a lot of stupid mistakes, and he's not a playmaker. If Tennessee's not on schedule, they're not worth a damn on offense. And they couldn't get the ball running on the ground with Sampson, and their O
Mhm.
line just got beat up. And Ohio State was just faster, more physical. I was super disappointed in Tennessee's secondary. That sucked. That was
Yeah,
bad.
I was thinking that if there was a mismatch in the game, it was Ohio State's wide receivers versus Tennessee's defensive backs. It was just a matter if Ohio State quarterback Will Howard would number one have the time, number two have the balls to actually try to throw it. You don't if you're Ohio State, going forward, they've got uh rematch against Oregon here. You don't have to overthink this if you're the Buckeyes, as much as I hate to say this. They've got incredible wide receivers out there who bring anything down. There's two NFL top 10 picks at wideout. One of them's a freaking true freshman. Um, it, they got really good running backs back there. Uh, the only handicap Ohio State has, and a lot of people out there agree with me, is their coach. I don't know if I would hire him to coach the local YMCA flag football team. He's made some
Because
decisions, but
Ohio State, they under his regime, they put too much emphasis on certain things like the Michigan game. And I think that with the storyline being this is a rematch, I think
yeah,
that could get them in trouble. They think a little bit too much. Oregon's better than Ohio State, and Ohio State, if they can't run the ball like they did, and you force Will Howard to win the game, it's not going to happen because Oregon's improved in their secondary. They got Jabbar
mhm,
Muhammad in the back end. He's really good. But Ohio State, I mean, this is probably the biggest game in the second round. But
yeah,
I
definitely.
don't really I don't see Ohio State getting it done. Not because I don't like them, but just because I think Oregon knows how to attack them. Oregon's not gonna have four guys in the box. They're not gonna do that stupid stuff, and they play a lot more zone. Tennessee got cooked in man coverage because they were 10
Mhm.
yards off the ball every
Yeah,
play,
yeah,
and
yeah. I'll never understand that ever.
you run a little in route or slant route, and that's 8 yards before you're even touched.
Hmm.
So, Oregon, they're gonna be ready, much better offense than, Tennessee has by far.
Yeah,
They're
Oregon really runs the ball well. If you go back 20 years to when Oregon really started this run that they've been on, they literally they run the ball very well out there. And for the past 3 or 4 years, they match up physically very well with these well now Big Ten uh, co-Big Ten teams, and then with the SEC teams down there. So I'm going to be a big fan of Oregon in the second round against the Buckeyes. I do want to point out one thing here. There was a about a 10-minute period of time, kind of end of first half, started the second half in the Tennessee Ohio State game, where Tennessee was running the ball down their throat. And there is a blueprint to beat the Buckeyes. It's happened. Uh, keep them on the side, keep their offense on the sidelines, run the ball, and we'll see. Big matchup in the second round. It's very difficult in college football to beat a team in a rematch during the same season. Um, we've seen Georgia do that with Texas twice this year. It's extremely difficult, but that's our second round matchup. Be fun to watch.
well, I just think Oregon's gonna run the ball, but they're efficient because they run those little quick screens and they get their fast guys open across the middle. They don't go downfield as much. They go across the middle and let them run. So Ohio State, they're going to make plays, but I just think again, relying on Will Howard to make the plays in this game, he's not going to. So I got the Ducks just because they're so efficient on offense, they're opportunistic on defense, and physically they match up with Ohio State. They're not gonna get blown back, and they're not gonna be out of place like Tennessee was, because Ohio State they weren't running anything too exotic. They're running a lot of flood concepts where you run out of trips. Really, you would have a guy in the slot on the inside run an out route and then the dude next to him would just run something short at 5 yards, maybe a hitch, and then the outside guy just runs downfield to open it up. This wasn't, groundbreaking stuff they were doing, but it
Mm.
was just open. And you have man coverage against their receivers. Like you said, there was that mismatch there. They just exploited it. But Oregon will be ready for that. They understand what they're trying to do. They have game film on Ohio State. And I think it comes down to who runs the ball and the turnover battle. And I think Oregon's going to do that pretty well, run the ball pretty well. And I think they're going to force Howard into doing something stupid.
Yeah, we can see that. We've seen that multiple times with the Buckeyes this year. Um, of the 8 teams that are left, I am a big fan of the Oregon Ducks. I'd love to see them win it all. That's nothing new. I was talking about that at the very beginning of the season. But on the top side of that, yeah, Clemson and Texas. Clemson was like the little engine it could. They didn't give up. They scored fourth quarter to make it a one-score game, and um, they had another time they were down at the 1 yard line, and they had three very unimaginative play calls there and did not score, and that was the end of the ball game. But Texas and Ohio State in a lot of ways kind of mirror each other. They've got superior athletes everywhere. They got these giant linemen who can get tired. You when you're watching the telecast, you always hear about the 340-pound um, guard and the 355-pound defensive tackle. Well, that's great. Those guys are good for one play out of three. They're too big and they can't they're out there sucking air. They just can't. Um, that said, the Longhorns have an awful lot of depth, and they apparently don't have a quarterback controversy because uh, Arch Manning did not start. um,
That was a stupid thing to say. That was dumb. Quinn Ewers has been their starter for multiple years. He's taken them to two playoffs. That was stupid. That's just
look,
all internet garbage.
look,
Arch was
I know that, you know that, but this is a different era of college football with the transfer portal and
doesn't
$20
matter.
million
You're
rosters and name,
not,
image, likeness,
no,
and all this other crap, man.
no, you're not going to start a freshman that has no real experience against good teams in the college football playoff. That's ignorant. That's crazy.
Well,
I don't know what information and media that you're taking in, but that's garbage. There's no world where that would be true. No world.
I'm just saying that the Bleacher Report, ESPN, they're talking about is there a problem in Texas with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning? Is something going on? I, I'm just
No.
I'm just buying into it because I can't stand the Longhorns. I hope that they crash and burn. Uh,
Well, if you want them to crash and burn, then Arizona State isn't going to be the team that does that. Because Arizona State, they have Cam Skattebo, this little bowling ball running back. And cool story, whatever. You win the Big 12. But their O line against the Texas front seven, it's going to be a massacre. That game, I'd love to sit and analyze that game. Arizona State doesn't have much of a downfield passing game.
mm,
They can throw it, 10, 15 yards, but the secondary for Texas is very strong. They have Jahdae Barron. He won the Thorpe Award. So
Yeah.
he had it strapped up in the back end, and they are just too physical in the front. Scatterby's not gonna do a damn thing, and their QB isn't gonna make the plays. You don't really have to even look at that game. Texas is gonna
Of the second round playoff games, I think this is the one that could mirror some of the first round results, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, if Texas won that game 45-7, I wouldn't be surprised. That sounds about right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
there's it's down, and I say this with respect to the Arizona State Sun Devils, who were preseason finished to or picked to finish dead last in the Big 12, and they had a hell of a run. Um, but they probably don't have a guy on their roster at Texas recruited.
no, I don't know. Cool story, they're coached pretty well, but they just can't match up, especially on defense. Those Texas guys are gonna kill them. I mean,
Yeah,
Wisner's running back, and then number 5 on the outside, I think his name's Wingo.
yeah, I
But you
think
have
so.
their
Yeah.
tight end, number 85, they can't cover that guy. If they throw him the
Uh,
ball 15 times, he'll catch it 15. So, that's not a game, man, and it sucks. But like you said, terrible day of football yesterday. It's just gonna carry on in that game. Texas is gonna dominate.
yeah, I think that we can I think we can write the horns in the semifinals in Sharpie here.
Yeah.
The last or the on the other side of the bracket, you do have Notre Dame versus Georgia, and Georgia's an interesting case. All year, it seems like when they come out to play, they just win. You can ask the Texas Longhorns that twice, and hell, they very well may play again in the finals. I mean, that's possible. You know, um, Carson Beck, he is out for this game. Gunnar Stockton, got a killer name. Third year sophomore. He's been through the program. I mean, yes, he played the second half of the Texas game, the SEC championship game, and took him to overtime, and Georgia won the game. I think that he can run the ball. Um, Notre Dame, ever since that crazy loss they had to Northern Illinois, has pretty much beat the crap out of everybody else. But here's the big but, and I cannot lie. Okay. Um, we've seen this with Notre Dame before. They get to the big moment. We've seen it against Alabama a couple times. I think we've seen it some other times. I can't think of who the heck else they played in the playoffs, but then they kind of
Clemson.
get rolled. So, um, why? Tell me this, Zach. Okay, backup quarterback who's never really seen a whole lot of action, but we're still looking at the Georgia Bulldogs as favorite, not just to win this game, but favorite to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're Georgia, man. It doesn't matter. It's kind of plug and play in that program because they develop well. I mean, it's one thing to recruit well, but they
Yeah,
develop.
yeah.
That guy's been in the system for multiple years. He knows what's going on. When he stepped in there, it was second nature to him. And they're gonna be fine. If they do wanna win the whole thing, they just gotta beat Georgia, and that's pound the rock. You don't have to have this guy be the hero like Beck was. He doesn't have to throw the ball 37 times. They don't have to do that.
And you know
Keep
something
facilitating.
that, yeah, that might actually help Georgia because we've seen Carson Beck try to be the hero multiple times this season.
Yeah, and, it comes with play calling. The quarterback isn't calling the plays, but knowing that what worked against Texas, they can bring that forward to the playoff. Just get
Hmm.
it to your big tight end. Throw it short, let your guys get 6, 7 yards. The dump off is gonna be there to ETN, and I really like Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan, um, but my thing is the Georgia defense because Notre Dame has the lockdown secondary, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Xavier Watts, Benjamin Morrison in the back end, nasty. And Jack Kaiser, he's their captain linebacker. He's a stud. But filling the gaps against Indiana compared to filling the gaps against Georgia, it's going to be a
Hmm.
tough night there. I just think that Riley Leonard isn't going to make the plays. And it doesn't matter that it's a second string QB on the other sideline. It doesn't. I don't think he's going to make the plays. They're going to try those silly quarterback designed runs, and Georgia's going to come in there and stick him and put him on his back.
Georgia's
And
got at least four defensive players that are projected as first round draft pick, two of them on the edge, one linebacker and one up in the secondary. And they are freaking studs out there. They're awesome. And we've seen this with Georgia every year. They have these incredible guys on defense. I think Notre Dame's going to have a hard time. Notre Dame's definitely going to have to try to play keep away. You know, that ball control. Uh, I can't see any way that the Fighting Irish win this game. You know,
I think if
it
they
all
could jump,
depends. Yeah,
maybe. I mean, you have the big problem is Georgia's front seven is so fast and physical. Yeah, I love, he's fantastic. In Notre Dame, 3 of those linemen on their O-line will be in the NFL in 5 years.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my thing is Riley Leonard's gonna have to make plays kinda like the Ohio State game. He's gonna have to make big throws on 3rd downs. He's gonna have to put the ball in a bucket. He's gonna have to have a tough scramble on 3rd down to get the 1st down, and I just don't think that's gonna happen in this game. I think that Georgia, if they just facilitate, let their young QB get those rhythm completions like Texas does really well, and then hand it off, let the O line lean on Notre Dame's front seven, then they'll just dominate. I think this is another blowout game. And it sucks to say that, but like you said, Notre Dame doesn't really shine in the spotlight. They just don't. And it sucks, but that's just how it is. They don't show up for these big games. And it's not that they're not prepared,
mm,
but it's almost like the Cowboys. I think they put a little bit too much on it. There's so much um, talk about Notre Dame, like, are they back in the prominence? And then they get to these games and they suck. That's just how
yeah,
it is.
yeah. I think that this is a game that we could see a final 31-17 that wasn't that close. Maybe Notre Dame gets a garbage time touchdown, and Georgia runs the clock for 12 minutes in the fourth quarter type of thing. I think it is interesting to note that we had the blowouts in week one. When we get to the quarterfinals with these better teams, I do think that if you've got somebody that's got a big lead, they might be taking the gas off a little bit in the fourth quarter as the competition stiffens. We've seen that in the past in the 14 playoff. But
Mm.
so I mean, I've got Georgia, I've got Penn State, I've got Texas, and I am going to take Oregon over the Buckeyes for two reasons. Number one, go Dylan Gabriel, Sooner legend, UCF legend, good grief now, Oregon legend. He's got a free lunch the rest of his life in Florida, Oregon, and in Oklahoma. Not a bad deal. They've got playmakers all over the field. I love their philosophy on defense, and I just don't like Ohio State. You're not supposed to use emotion when you're looking at this stuff, but I think Oregon's a better team.
Yeah, I think
They-
the emotion thing is big though because I've
yeah.
picked teams just because I don't like, but I very well could see Ohio State winning this game if Will Howard doesn't have to win the game. But I think that Oregon's smart enough and they're gonna scheme well, and they're gonna really look at what Michigan did when they beat them on defense, and they're gonna try to institute some of that in their game plan. But I just think they're way too efficient. You know, Gabriel's not gonna turn the ball over,
Excuse
he's gonna run the ball well. They can wear on that defense. Ohio State's gonna make good plays over the top. They're gonna have soul crushing 3rd down conversions. That's just how they play. But that will be a close game. I don't think that one could, unless there's a bad turnover battle there and, one team has 4 and the other has 1, then,
me.
it could get ugly, but that's not gonna happen. Now
Yeah,
for
this figures to be the high scoring game of the quarterfinals. Game one between the two was what was it? Was it 38-35 or was it 34-31? It was a field goal. Oh no, or was it? It was I think it was a 1 point game because
I don't remember. That was a
I
long
don't
time.
remember. Yeah, that was a long time ago, man. But I think that this will definitely both teams will be scoring in the 30s. A lot of offense, a lot of big time players out there. We got about 2 minutes left. Um, just if nothing else, we are down to 8 teams, and you could say that if you don't count Boise State and Arizona State, it's probably about right where it's supposed to be. The SEC teams that didn't make it, Miami, two lost Miami team. Do they have a gripe? Well, they can gripe all they want. They're not here. They didn't get a seat at the table this time, so they're sitting at home watching. So we'll see, but it's going to be fun.
Well, I think more than any other game, that Ohio State Oregon game will come down to little things like special teams and just not turning the ball over. But I don't really like you counting out Boise State. I think Boise State's gonna make a point when they play. I think Genty is gonna come out with his hair on fire. I don't care about the Penn State defense. I don't care how highly rated they are and the way that they looked on Saturday. I don't care. This is a different animal in Boise State. They're being really disrespected. They win in the Fiesta Bowl. It's kind
Yeah,
of their
yeah.
thing. And they can throw the ball well. They have a good defense, and Penn State isn't anything special on offense. So if this game gets into we give you a punch and then they throw one back, I like Boise State in that more.
We're running real short on time. I want to say something I forgot to mention. I don't think there's been a whole lot of talk about this time between the conference championship games and the teams that have a bye and are playing here in the second round. Um, that helps Arizona State. That helps Boise. I do think that Texas is just way too much for Boise. I'm sorry, for Arizona State. But when it comes to Boise and Penn State, that extra time, we've seen Boise do incredible things out there when they've got time to game plan. So, um, I think they got a shot. I like them. I love the blue field, but it's a lot to ask. But
Well, they're a sworn enemy of OU. I don't like Boise State, but I do think that they're going to beat Penn State. I think that Drew Aller, they're going to force him into making some stupid plays. I think if they can run it downhill like they did against SMU, then
yeah.
kind of like what Boise State does. If they can run it downhill and lean on you, they have a chance. But
All right,
I'm taking
we
them.
got 15 seconds left. Dallas Bucks tonight. Who you got?
I think that
10 seconds.
Ohio State sucks.
Ohio State sucks. Texas sucks. Jaws on Sports. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Have a good night. Horns down. We're out.